think we have a quorum. So I'll call to order the board for the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board. It's Thursday, June 24th, and it's a little after 3 p.m., so we are now in session. At this point, I'll ask for any public comment on some issues that are not on the agenda, but this is your opportunity to stand and voice your opinions. Seeing or hearing none, we'll go to item number 3. And John Mark Hogue, our vice chair, is not here, but in his absence, we will re-elect him. And when I first got this agenda, I kept thinking, well, how many times do we have to elect old John Mark? But it had to do something with our teleconferencing in the meeting that we elected him. So I'm going to open the floor for a motion to elect John Mark Hogue as our vice chairman.
So acclamation, John Mark, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we have a motion and a second for acclamation to elect him as vice chairman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will notify him that he's been re-elected again.
We don't have to do that again next month?
I hope not.
Okay.
Yeah, he has the shortest term of office of anybody on this month to month. All right, so he is re-elected. We'll go to item number 4, and you should have in front of you, provided you minutes from our January 26th meeting. I had to ask Mr. Brown if that was the last meeting that we had, and he told me that it was. So do we have the minutes for your perusal? And I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Fred makes the motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Dudrum makes a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Okay, you should have in front of you the financial report. Somewhere in my packet I had an April 30 and then I have a May 31, so we'll consider the May 31. It's the most recent one. And I'll ask Mr. James to present that for us, please, sir.
Thank you. Excuse me. Just had to get the PowerPoint pulled up here. Similar to in the past, you did hopefully got by email the financial report. Here's a summary of the North. We started out the year, this is the fiscal year beginning October 1st, with just under $2 million. You can see there are expected revenues for the year. Those are anticipated based on estimates from our finance department, and so those could change, but they don't usually change more than a couple $1,000, just based on taxes that come in throughout the year. We've got our expenditures there. The private incentives committed, that's all of the past year's projects that have already been committed funds for. So once you all approve a project and City Council approves it, we pull those funds out and put it in this committed category so that basically we don't spend it again. Similarly with the Chadbourne Street project, those monies get taken out at the first of the year. You may recall that a couple of years ago, you and the City Council approved setting aside a portion of North and South funds each year over a period of 8 years for that Chadbourne Street project. So that's the amount that's currently in that set aside for that. A couple of minor things, the streetscape maintenance. A few years ago, the board put some money into streetscape maintenance. Every time a tree needs to be replaced or bushes need to be trimmed or something like that, we just pull from those funds as needed. And then similarly, if this is on the North, on the maybe 2-3 years ago, the board set aside for public improvements, so sidewalks, street lights, those sorts of things. A certain percentage of the funds had to go towards public improvements, and so that 103,740 is basically the leftover of those public set aside that has not been spent. We've left it in that public improvement set aside fund for future use for some type of public project. And then the operating expenses, that goes for things like mail-outs and postage and printing and those kinds of things, very minimal. So in the north area, the bottom line, after you subtract all those expenses from our expected revenue and what we began the year with, results in about 1.3 million available for assignment, which is funds that you have available to spend either on requested incentive projects or other projects that may come up outside of that incentive program. I won't go through all of these. The categories are the same in the south area, but each of those same line items on the north is also on the south, with a couple of exceptions. There's not the public improvements set aside, for example, but the south begins the year with less money, about 500,000. After we subtract out the already committed funds, that leaves about 128,000 for assignment. You'll see, fortunately, when we get to the incentive requests later, oftentimes we'll have more requests than we have money to spend. This year, or this cycle, we're fortunate that that's not the case. That's really just a quick overview of the finances. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Tom?
Yeah, I have a question. On the streetscape maintenance, is that an annual amount that we set aside, or?
I don't believe so. I think it was a one-time that we keep drawing
So when
down.
that's gone, we would have to
Yes, and we would probably, when that runs out, we'll probably come back and ask for, I think it was around 10,000 or something. So a pretty small amount in the scheme of the amount of funding we have, but yeah.
Thank you.
I should note, I'm sorry, in your printed copy of the PowerPoint, there are a couple of numbers that got transposed. We fixed it for this. Some of those numbers I'm not sure are even big enough to even read, but in case you notice that, there are a couple of numbers that were backwards, and we fixed it in the final presentation here. And the actual financial report is correct as well.
Briefly, out of sight, out of mind, but this Chadbourne Street project, how much money have we spent on that? Where are we on that project?
You know, I don't have the latest on how much has actually been spent. As you can tell, the phase one or phase A is getting closer and closer to completion. I don't believe, particularly in the north, none of phase A was in the north, so that money is really just sitting there building up until the phase B of the project that'll go from, I think, Harris all the way up to the freeway.
Okay.
So most of the north funds are just sitting there waiting for other funds to be matched with it to do that north part. But
Those are state funds and otherwise?
yeah, I think with the first phase, I mean, it included funding sources from 8 or 10 different sources of funding.
Okay.
Have there been any cost overruns or changes in the contract?
You know, I can't answer that. We're not directly involved in that project. So we offer, the TIRZ money, we're responsible for funding that.
Change orders that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, but I mean, again, I wouldn't know that at this point.
I would think that by the next board meeting, you might want to check, make sure that if there have been change orders that affect the balance, that's going to go down potentially. That 128,000 will go down.
Well, no, I will say that the amount coming from TIRZ will not change. So if the project cost doubled, it wouldn't bring any more from the TIRZ. You all in the city council approved a fixed amount of money.
And who eats that cost if there's a change order?
That's a good question. One of the other funding sources would have to, or as is typical, the project could be scaled back slightly to address any of those issues.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding finances? All right, item number 6, reconsideration and possible action regarding 2821 and 2829 of North Chadbourne.
So I'm going to go through a real brief history here on this project. These are two side-by-side properties. The original incentive grants the agreements were executed back in 2017. The board granted an extension in 2019 basically through December of 2020.
Okay, remind me, what's the name? Give me a name of the...
Harvey Andrews was the applicant. And
Okay.
He's
All
here
right,
to
Harvey.
speak.
Okay,
And there'll be some pictures of the project
Okay,
as
all right.
well.
okay,
But basically, the agreements, when you all give someone funding, they have a certain number of years to complete the project and request the funding. And if that time expires, they've basically lost their opportunity. You all gave an extension, but said, no later than December of 2020. And so this project expired, and you all authorized us in, I think, January, that may be on the next slide. You authorized us to send a letter basically saying the project is terminated and asking for the 10% back. So with these incentive projects, we give 10% of the money up front, and then they get the other 90% once everything's completed. So we sent the letter asking for that 10% back and informing the applicant that the project had expired and they were no longer eligible. And so Mr. Andrews had come to us saying that he had completed most of the work. He just had not provided us the pictures and invoices and information that we had requested. And so he asked to come back to make his case to you all to basically reinstate his funding and fund the parts of the project that he did complete. Staff is not making a recommendation on this. This is a situation that really hasn't come up. So we're looking for the board's direction on how to deal with a situation like this. On the one hand, he did complete the work or some of the work. And so there's an argument for paying him the money that he was promised for completing that work. On the other hand, the agreement did set out things that he had to do in order to claim those funds. And so we don't want to necessarily set a precedent for having to do this over and over for folks who don't meet those timelines in the agreement. If you're inclined to reconsider and approve some funding, staff is recommending, again, if you lean that direction, recommending approving these items: the exterior painting, the roof facade, the stonework, and the landscaping, for a total of $34,500. He was originally authorized $65,000, and this is for the 2821 North Chadbourne. And I can come back to these. I know I'm going pretty quickly. 2829 North Chadbourne, again, similar items: painting, facade, and landscaping, for a total of $25,400 versus the originally authorized $58,000. I'll note that he did do the paving, and so he was requesting an additional $18,000 and $21,500 for the paving work. And then the items that he had originally requested that were not completed were the windows, doors, and garage doors. And I say they weren't completed. We never received any invoices or pictures or anything showing that those had been done. So at this point, we wouldn't recommend funding those because we don't have any evidence they were completed. And given the board's past practice of discouraging the use of funds for paving, and given the issues with this project and that he didn't complete everything, we would recommend not including, not covering those costs for paving, but only the aesthetic building improvements and landscaping and all of that. So I think that's kind of the overview. He was originally approved $124,000. We're recommending funding about $60,000, $59,900. Again, that's only if you are interested in recommending that this be reopened to fund his.
Why didn't they give you the invoices as he completed it?
He's here to speak, so I can let him kind of give you his reasoning and background of why it got to where it did, but I would defer to him.
Have you received any invoices today?
Yes, we wouldn't have even brought this to you if we hadn't received those. So to date, we now have invoices for all of these items, yes. So, and we've verified that the improvements were actually made, and we do have the paid invoices, so.
So you have the paid invoices for the 59.9 or for the 124?
Well, and the 39.5, but again, staff's recommendation is not to fund that piece. You're obviously welcome to do that if you choose to. So if you were inclined to fund everything he actually completed, it would be this 39.5 for paving plus the 59.9 that staff is recommending.
Okay, sir. All right.
When did you get the invoices and the pictures?
I'm not sure if I included that off the top of my head. I don't. Let's see. It was, I don't know. Do you remember when those were sent?
Shannon, we sent all this in, and she said she had everything.
February 12th, 2021, John.
Well, I think there, some must have come later, because we actually sent the termination letter on February 25th. And so I think there was, and I don't want to dispute what he just said, and if, for the record, it wasn't on microphone, so he said that he talked to Shannon, the previous person who coordinates this program, who has now left the city. My conversation with her, she said at that point they had not received all of the information necessary to move forward, and that's what she came and presented to the board back when you all originally terminated that contract.
So John, I'm
But
gonna
now, again, we do have those, and they came in sometime after February 2021. Between then and today, I want to say late February, March, April, sometime in that time frame.
So let me rewind it here. So you said that we gave them an extension to December 2020, is that correct?
That's right.
And we all know how 2020 worked out for everyone. So we need to consider that. And I do stress when we give time extensions, we should encourage them to get it done. But I think 2020 was just a mess for everyone. But I have passed through that property a lot, and it does look a lot better. And that's the north side of town, especially when rodeo comes and stuff. We want that. I stress we need that side looking a lot better than what it is. So I passed through there, and I've seen the paving, and I've seen the paint and all that, and it's looking good, Mr. Anderson. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Good.
Is it occupied?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, sir, it's ready.
Okay, John, at this time, do we have Mr. Andrews to speak to this?
Yes, you can have him speak
Okay.
and answer any questions that you might
All
have
right.
for him.
Mr. Andrews?
I hate to say, I think John did a better job than I could do that. And so Shannon Scott, man, she was excellent to work with. And so was John James. And all the problems that this project had is standing right here. It was me. I didn't do a good job on it. Y'all did a good job. And what's amazing, though, is after I spent the money on this project, I took a step back and looked at it and said, man, I should have done it whether I had the project or not. You know, so it was kind of an eye-opener. But either way you guys, you know, rule, man, y'all, we're very impressed with you guys. Y'all have treated us great. We have no complaints at all. I've talked to the mayor and told her how happy I was, to John Kahn, and told him, you know, that it was my fault because he really stuck his neck out helping me get in to get the deal. But the bottom line is the property is done. It looks a lot better. The owner's happy. Hopefully you guys are happy. If y'all could help me out, it would be appreciated. If not, I understand that we have timelines and I didn't make it. So, you know, I'm not gonna.
Tell me again about the invoice issues. Where, you did submit them or did not?
You know, I felt like we did send them to Shannon.
You feel like you have a record of it?
My secretary does. I'm very low tech. You know, I'm the lowest tech guy here, and I handed everything to her, and usually she's extremely good. But Shannon's good too, and I don't know exactly what happened. And like the windows, we ordered the windows, but because of COVID, man, they wouldn't give us the doors and the windows, you know, so.
I have some personal experience with that as well, so I
Yes, sir.
understand.
But I would appreciate any help that y'all could give me, and if not, you know, I'm still gonna say hi to you in the restaurants because it wasn't y'all's fault.
Mr. Andrews, tell me then, who occupies these?
We have a Spanish restaurant that's in one of them,
Okay,
and then also he's setting up he's changing it to a barber shop, the old gas station.
so that's the other address?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have pictures of those?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I ended a little too early.
That's all right.
And you were doing a good job, you know it?
Pictures here. So there's a before
Thank you.
picture of the site, and then a few after pictures, and I think there's one more after a
that was the old Joe's Restaurant.
Yeah.
And I don't know if y'all have ever been there, that place needed a lot of work.
Looked a lot better.
Yes.
You know, I appreciate Fred's comments. I mean, last year was we all know what it was. As far as I'm concerned, I'll be honest with you, and the board, y'all are probably getting tired of hearing me say this, but you know, our charge as this commission is to put money to work. I'm not a politician, but we need to play by the rules that we have, and I guess if I could be satisfied, John, that your invoices are in,
Yes,
you know.
if he had submitted what we received
Yeah.
in the past few months,
Mhm.
before the deadline,
Yeah.
we would have easily been able to make those
To
payments.
fully fund everything that we had approved,
That's correct.
okay? Well, Tom?
Well, I guess I'm disappointed in the fact that you're telling us you sent this information in, and your secretary has the
Let's-
records of when it was. That was nice of you to bring all this, but why didn't you bring a copy of her records to show us that you actually did send it in?
Yes, sir.
That would have been nice to have.
Okay.
Well,
That's my comment.
I appreciate that. You have this? Yeah.
That's all.
Okay. Steve?
I've looked at that, don't
All right.
Thank you.
Well, I'm open to entertaining a motion as to what the
Well,
board wants to do.
John, what did you say you would recommend helping them with if we did decide?
Well, really, you've got two options. The staff had recommended funding everything except the paving, which would be the $59,900. If you wanted to also include the paving, which would fund him for everything he did, that would be the $59,900 plus this $39,500.
59.9 plus 39.
And the North has the money. I mean, there's no issue
Oh,
there.
That's right.
My
We're
only,
talking about roughly $98,000, right?
yeah, instead of the 124 that was originally approved, because he didn't do the last part, but,
Do you plan to come before this board again with any other grants, applications?
I don't know. I really enjoyed everything except the part that I
You don't have
did.
anything in mind right now for the north,
Like for future projects.
future projects.
I would.
If you do, and I'm gonna vote yes, but you better be on time.
Absolutely.
I
And you
agree.
better bring your invoices in and verify and get a receipt for the invoices.
Yes, sir.
And you keep a copy of it, because the rules are rules.
Yes, sir.
And it's not made for us to just throw money away. I
Well,
appreciate what you've done, but I went
Right.
and looked at it. It looks a hell of a lot better than it did.
Yes, sir.
Greg?
my only concern, and I don't know how to word this correctly, and I want to applaud you for getting this done, and I've seen the building, and it looks much better, is I don't want us to set a precedent that we can come back and come around our rules.
Exactly.
I think we need to fund this, but I don't want to set a precedent that we can break the rules, that you have a deadline to get everything in, but you can come back later and get it if you don't follow the rules.
Yes.
So if we do this, and I'm in favor of doing this in some manner, whether we do with or without the paving, I'm okay either way, but, is that we make sure this is a one-off. This is not we're not gonna consider this, we're not setting a precedent that we would ever consider this again, that, so we don't have people think that, oh, well, I can be late and come back, because rules are rules, and we have to follow the deal. And we all know the penalty if you don't follow the rules, you pay the price. So,
Okay,
and I'm like Tom, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if you brought, hey, this is the date I faxed this, or this is the date I emailed this, if you had a copy of that email saying that this is the date it went. And,
I have never sent an email, so.
well, your secretary could print it,
Sent a
get print,
fax.
and-
Yeah.
yeah, but, to do that, so.
But for your future present, for your future,
I'm gonna throw something out as a possible motion, that we reimburse everything, but only half the payment. I think you deserve a penalty of some kind, and so I'm gonna say we reimburse half of the payment.
That's more than fair.
Because that would bring it to a total of what, John? You're the mathematician.
Well, you spent 39.5 and a half, and that'd be, 19,750 on top of, the other.
I'm out of this, guys. I was never good at chemistry.
So your motion, Stephen, is
That's
to
my
do the
motion.
full other repairs and half the paving?
That's
Yes.
correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other comments from the board members? Well, let me say this, Harvey, last year was a horrible year for everybody for a lot of reasons. And that's why I'm supportive of this motion and this second. But I don't want to put the staff in a compromising position. So we as a commission, y'all keep us in between the lines going forward. But on the other hand, I do realize that, life is life and things come up. And we need to be sensitive to that. So we have a motion and a second to fund how much? $79,650, and we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion. Sir?
Opposed.
We have one that opposes. Okay. Motion carries. 5-1. All right, thank you, Mr.
And
Andrews.
Tom, I'm still gonna say hi to you in the restaurants.
Okay, that's good. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
We appreciate it. All right, item number 7. Sidewalk project, North Chadbourne Street, between 5th and 6th.
So this came at the request of a property owner who owns the property that, if you see the word parking lot there, and this is a little confusing. I can use this pointer, but you'll have to turn around to see it.
Window Depot?
Yeah, it's Window Depot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe I won't use the pointer.
That's right, I can follow you.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Chadbourne coming up to the curve at 5th Street.
Right,
And then you curve around 5th, and then we pick up back over here,
right.
and that's curving up, and this is the frontage road for the freeway. This, what you're looking at is preliminary plans for the Chadbourne Street project, which would include reconstructing the street, sidewalks, all of that. So what the folks at Window Depot had asked is, could we go ahead and do the sidewalks ahead of time, and do the street later, but go ahead and fund the sidewalk piece to help improve their sidewalks. If you haven't seen it, they're all torn up. And so what this item was to do today was ask for your support for us to move forward looking into that. So I guess I'm still going to ask for that, but I will say we've gotten most of the answer is that because of the interconnectedness of the sidewalk, the drainage, and the street, it's really going to be difficult to do one without doing all the rest at the same time. So I think at this point, what staff's recommendation is going to be is not to move forward, but to just wait until the whole Chadbourne project comes to fix this. However, I guess I would like your direction to let us continue looking into it a little bit. And if that changes, I know our engineers are still looking at it. If that changes for some reason, we'll just bring it back to you. I don't really need a formal action, I don't think, but unless you want to tell me, just drop it completely. But otherwise, we'll research it just a little more. But I think the answer is going to be, we're going to have to just wait until the whole Chadbourne project comes.
Okay, and that would come out of when you're looking at the north, on these financial statements, that'd come out of that 371,000?
Well, that would be the other question that you really wouldn't have to answer today. I think the request was to use, since the North has excess funding, to
Okay.
use other funding
Other
to go ahead and
funds.
do that instead of the set-aside Chadbourne
Okay,
funding.
all right.
But that would really be up to you all, if and when we would bring back an actual request.
How much you estimated cost?
That's so hard to say at this point. I think their estimate for just the sidewalk was about 90,000, but then, again, that assumed it as part of the whole road and drainage project. So if we were to do it just by itself without the road, it would probably be significantly higher because some of the drainage would still have to be done. Some of the other work would still have to be done, but at this point, we don't have a good number for what that would be.
You know, it's important, that particular, and I'll just say intersection, but that little loop there, that is so important to our downtown area because a lot of people probably enter downtown via that
Right.
little loop. And it needs to look nice and be well cared for. Well, I'll listen to the board. Y'all have any suggestions or recommendations as to what you want to do, or we want to follow the staff's recommendation?
Well, yeah, I think we have to wait.
Yeah.
We can't throw away money and have
No.
to come back and redo it.
Okay. Tom, is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Okay, Greg? Okay, we'll defer to the staff on that.
Okay.
All right, item number 8.
So this is discussion and direction from the board on TIRZ incentive criteria. The board had asked a while back for us to bring back a discussion item. We can spend as much or as little time on this as you want. I'm going to go through kind of the highlights of what, as we've kept notes over the past couple of years of the questions the board has asked. And so these are things we're looking for direction from you on. We'd be happy to get direction today. I know some of these you might want to go back and think on, so we don't absolutely need direction today. So the first would be about matching funds. There's been some questions in the past, what qualifies as matching? Our interpretation in the past has been matching, the matching funds that can count towards a project have to be for part of the project that is TIRZ eligible. In other words, if you're getting money for the facade, then the match has to be you putting in money towards the facade or the landscaping or something that's TIRZ eligible. What we've had applicants do in the past is say, well, I'm building this, $500,000 building. I want to count that as my match. Well, the TIRZ can't fund building, interior, furniture, any of that sort of stuff. So we've said we don't want that to count as match either. I know that question has come up, and so the question for you all is that direction that we've been doing okay, or do you want to look at something different? I'll just keep going if you want to stop and discuss each of these.
What's the current required match percentage?
Well, that gets into the second question, should match be required? Right now, the match is 25%, and we give 75%. The only exception to that is in the north, if the project is less than $10,000, they don't have to do a match. But otherwise, if it's more than $10,000, or if it's less than $10,000 in the south, there's always a 25% match. I don't remember who it was, but a board member at a recent meeting asked the question, should we require a match? Are some of these projects, should we just fund the whole thing? We've always recommended a match, but again, because that was raised by one of the board members, that's one of the questions we're looking for direction on. Another big one is, what is a project? We've had a number of projects. One I'm thinking of is there was a restaurant and another business. It's the same building, but they have two separate addresses. And so we had the question, is that one project or two separate? We treat it as two separate because it's two addresses, two separate businesses. And the reason that becomes important is because there's a cap on the amount of funding you can get of $75,000. In that case, they could get the cap of $75,000 for each of those two. But I know the question was raised from, I think it might have been another applicant, isn't that really one project? It's on one lot, so it's one piece of property, happens to have two businesses. Again, because it was two separate businesses, two addresses, we treated them as two separate projects. But again, if that's something you all would like to see us change, that's a direction we'd like to hear from you. And then the question was brought up about people asking for multiple applications. We've had one project in the south has gotten funding 3 different times. It's a very good project, but in some cases we don't have enough funds to give out everyone who's asking. Should we limit the number of cycles someone can apply? We have not recommended that in the past. What I would suggest is just make that part of your consideration. If they've gotten money before and there's more people asking for money than what we've got available, maybe you give them a lower weight. That would be one way to look at it. But again, the project I'm thinking of is the Firehouse Bed and Brew. Great project. They've gotten money 3 times, but every time they used it for a very quality kind of improvement to that property. So we wouldn't want to, at least staff's recommendation is not to limit it to say, once you've gotten money, you can't come back for 2 years or 3 years. But maybe just to consider that in your, as you think about each project. Again, I feel like I'm going through these quickly, and I've got like a couple more slides, but before I move on, if there's any comments or questions on this slide.
Do you have some thoughts, John, on projects that might create an industrial base or enhance an industrial base?
Well, actually, I think that's on the next slide, is what the different, how we should weight different projects. So I'll move on to that, given that project. So what should the priority of projects be? Staff's recommendation, based on the original TIRZ plan and just city plans and what the way we look at things, is to give the highest priority to historic preservation, improving building facades in the downtown, and then housing. I think in the original plan, housing wasn't rated highly, but in the city council's recent housing study, it showed that downtown housing was a priority for the city and something that's missing. And so that's the reason we've included housing on the high priority list. Medium would be landscaping, other aesthetic type improvements, maybe not to the building facade, but fencing or things like that, as well as health and safety, fire sprinklers, other curb ramps for wheelchair access, those kinds of things would be in that medium category. Lower priority would be signage, other building improvements that don't necessarily improve the visual facade of the building. And then the lowest priority, as we've discussed before, would be things like parking lots and paving. And again, just a reminder that paving is only eligible if it's part of a larger project. In fact, you'll see when we talk about the incentive projects this year, there are a couple that are not actually eligible because all they've requested for is paving. And so our intent, at least in the past, it's always up to the board if you want to change that policy, but that if they want to redo their parking lot or something like that, it really needs to be part of an overall improvement to their property. We really don't want to just be funding somebody who needs to resurface their parking lot and get TIRZ money to do that. That doesn't really we think, doesn't get the bang for the buck of improving the area like some of these other higher priority things are. So again, that's our recommendation for our prioritization.
I have a question. Do you have some thoughts, or the staff have some thoughts about what a project will do for the tax base of that facility? In other words,
Yeah.
The whole idea, in my mind, not necessarily anybody else's, is we're trying to improve the tax base in certain areas because of the rundown, dilapidated conditions.
Right.
And if we're not improving the tax base, we're not achieving it. I don't see anything in there that has anything to do with the base of the taxes.
I think that's a good point. Part of the answer to that is some of the things, like you mentioned, industrial, because we have a separate funding source for those kinds of things that are to encourage industrial job growth through the economic development program, the TIRZ was created to not overlap what that program can do, but to look at different things with a focus on encouraging redevelopment, and part of the way to do that is encouraging visual improvement because of the dilapidation of one of the rationales for the TIRZ initially was, as things get run down, we're putting money towards fixing them up and making them look better. So I guess that would be my answer, is that we don't want to overlap with these funds what the economic development funds do in terms of tax base, job growth, and that set of criteria that they look at.
I would agree with John, but Stephen, I can tell you that when the mayor approached me and appointed me to this position, she was very adamant in her comments to me that tax base was important.
Right.
She said, overall,
That's right.
that consider the tax base of what you're doing and the money that you're granting, that it improves the tax base. But I will also say, sometimes when you have a question about paving, and I don't know if John remembers this, but in my previous lifetime, when I was vice chair of the Downtown Economic Development Commission, we had a gentleman appear before us, and one of the questions I asked him specifically was paving. And he was in the appraisal tax, and he surprised me by saying that absolutely improves the tax base.
That's right.
So I don't want us to think that someone spending money on paving doesn't improve, because he surprised me. I didn't think it did, but he told me that it did.
It does.
So, anyway.
So I'll go
John-
ahead and move on to my last slide. If-
Yeah, go to your last slide, and then
And
I've
so
got a
basically,
comment.
looking for other considerations, one thing that has been brought up in the past is if something's already fairly nice, would we want to prioritize a building that's really dilapidated, as we compare, say, two projects and we can only fund one, is something that's an existing eyesore, should that get more weight than something that's already reasonably nice that just wants to improve it a little more? That's not one of our criteria now, but it is something that's come up. Visibility is another one. You're going to see a project that was requested in this incentive cycle to replace windows on the rear of a building. It's in an alley, it's not visible from any street. So yes, it's improving a building in the downtown, but no one can see it. We tend to focus on, fronts and things visible from the street. So one of the questions you'll be asked a little bit later is, do we want to fund that project for windows that can't be seen? But that's not one of the criteria we specifically list. And is that something you'd like us to pay attention to more? And another question that's kind of hard to judge, but is there something planned to go into that building? So is it a building that already has a business in it, or are they improving it specifically for a business? Versus we've had some that just want to improve the building to help the marketability, but they don't have a tenant planned for it. I think what we would say is improving that building to help the marketability will help get someone in there, even if they don't have someone lined up. But again, some of our previous applicants have said, I should get more weight because I've got a business ready to go in, versus somebody who's just speculating that they can, do something with it once it's improved. But again, that's not one of our criteria we look at now. So, but it is something we'd look for your direction on.
John, and I will throw this out to the board. I think all of us have some comments or some suggestions, but I would ask that we defer this to our next meeting, possibly when we don't have applications to consider, because these items, I think, deserve certain weight and certain comments and consideration. I don't want to blow them off or not give them.
Sure.
So if that's all right with the board, I'd like to, let's defer this to, because it will give us a reason to have a meeting when we don't have, because this will be substantive issues that I can justify calling a meeting. So is that all right with the board?
Sounds good.
You all have this printed material here, that memo that he sets out basically what he's said. So if we could do that, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely, and just so you know, the original intent was to have this on a different meeting, but
Yeah,
because of the
I understand.
cancellations and everything.
No, what you brought up are great issues that we need to discuss, because I think it helps us go back and justify why we're sitting here.
Right.
What are we really up to here? So I want to give it, time.
I agree.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so we'll say that we covered item number 8, and we will go to item number 9. And if you would, please go ahead and introduce yourself. I know you did to a couple of us, but
Yes, sir. So good afternoon, board. My name is Nolan Sosa, and I'm replacing Shannon Scott. I am city's economic development administrator. So I'm going to walk you all through the applications that we've received for the current awards cycle. And then following that, I'll give you some updates on TIRZ projects already in progress.
okay, let me say this is nothing against you at all, but Shannon sure was pleasant to look at, and when you were standing up there.
I know. Well,
And you're a handsome young man, but I'm just letting you know that.
City keeps me employed for my charisma, not my looks.
There you go. All right, okay.
There you go.
All right.
Very smart.
Yeah,
Good answer.
good answer. Okay, you've got the floor.
So the first incentive award cycle for the current fiscal year ran from April 1st through June 1st, and we received a total of 9 applications. We received 5 applications in the north and 4 applications in the south. So as I mentioned, we received 5 total applications in TIRZ North, and staff is recommending funding for 3 projects. On the Shine Bright Lube project, the applicant requested property tax, sales tax incentives, and job creation incentives. And as John mentioned, we're trying to keep more in line with the intent of the TIRZ program and really distinguish the TIRZ program from the programs that we have available in the Economic Development Corporation, our business retention and expansion programs and some of those economic development agreements that we execute with groups to bring jobs to San Angelo. So we really wanted to clearly delineate. I also wanted to note that Shine Bright received $75,000 for facade improvements, asbestos inspection, paving, and landscaping during a previous cycle. And in the past 5 years, staff has not recommended funding job creation or property tax reimbursements with TIRZ funds. We try to prioritize funding physical improvement projects. So staff is not recommending funding for this application. 216 West 3rd Street, the applicant requested paving and landscaping incentives. The applicant is Mr. Wynn Palmer with WAP Properties. We worked with Mr. Palmer to determine which portions of his project are for landscapings, sidewalks, and parking areas. We recommend funding this project for $36,000, which would include $12,000 for sidewalks, $12,000 for landscaping, and $12,000 for parking.
Let me interrupt you right there. Tell me about the landscaping.
So the landscaping would be clearing of existing brush as well as installation of some new landscaping fixtures like new trees, new plants. In his application, Mr. Palmer actually submitted a landscaping plan which Mr. James and I determined was thorough enough to warrant the funding for that $12,000 portion.
Planting is watered?
Sir?
Are the plantings watered by a sprinkler system or?
I am not aware of that.
Yeah, I don't think he included that information, although it is xeriscaped. So
It's xeriscape?
It's water tolerant plantings,
Okay.
it appears from the landscape plan.
All right. I just didn't want to plant a bunch of trees and if they're not watered down. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, sir. He would also be required to provide a $12,000 match, so the overall project cost would be $48,000, and we would fund $36,000.
Okay, what did you cut out? He requested $56,250.
He did. So when John and I looked at these projects, one of the things that we saw in this particular project is that a large portion of the cost was for paving a parking area. And so when we really started evaluating, we determined that it wouldn't generally comport with the past action that we've done to fund a project that is a majority paving parking areas. So John and I agreed that we need to keep the funding portion for paving to be a smaller portion of the overall project cost. So we basically scaled back the amount that we would fund for paving to be less than half of the project cost.
So you're recommending 36?
Yes, sir. And along those same lines, keeping with the TIRZ board's past actions on not funding paving majority projects, we reviewed the application for 601 West 11th Street, which is Windland Manufacturing. We reviewed their application. They wanted to pave a street adjacent to their property. Historically, paving-only projects are discouraged. And the board generally avoids funding street projects because of the limited availability of funds and the significant funding requirements associated with those street projects. So John and I determined that this project did not meet the criteria that's outlined in North Policy and did not recommend funding this project.
I can jump in and add that we contacted them, or they contacted us actually, and we gave them some direction on what kinds of things are eligible for TIRZ funding. We had hoped that they had a quick turnaround, so they weren't able to get anything for today, but we gave them the kinds of on this. Road improvements are not, the incentive program is for private property improvements, so road improvements aren't eligible in any case. Now, you can fund road improvements like we talked about with Chadbourne, but that would have to be done at the board's direction as a separate public improvement project. It wouldn't be done through this incentive.
So this application really is for public improvements.
Right, and so
Project.
I would call this one, we're not actually recommending not funding it. We're saying that it's ineligible for funding as presented. But we have worked with them to encourage them to come back because they are doing a major project and we think some of what they were doing will be TIRZ eligible. But just what they've requested in this application is not.
But that roadway project is gonna cost about $250,000. They hired the engineer, they're paying the engineer. That street is an abomination, as you well know. It is used significantly. Windland now has 35 employees and expanding. They have contracts that carry them out for the next 2 years. And so it's they've modified and improved their building facilities and their equipment and their tax base significantly. And I'm gonna be in favor, whatever, of doubling that 75,000 whenever the right time comes. I'm just one person, but I want to see us award the people who are making jobs in this town and increasing the tax base. And that's what Wyndham's doing.
I agree with that.
So John, you expect to hear back from them in some way that, or did you coach them on where they could find monies to do that work, or the city do the work, or whoever is responsible for that?
Nolan can probably answer this better than I can, but I know they've already received funding through economic development.
That's right.
For part of that road construction. But yeah, we've talked with them, but because they haven't really come back to us with anything, my recommendation would be to encourage them to reapply in October, November with the next cycle. Since again, what they've asked for in this particular application is not eligible.
Okay. Well, I agree with Stephen's comments. You know, this is a firm that we need to foster and do what we can do within appropriate guidelines and eligibility. But, so anyway, well said, Stephen, and we'll see.
How do we get this stick out of the road, John? What do we do? We need to talk to David or Kendall or what?
Well, if the board was interested in considering funding a road project outside of the incentive program, which is where that would have to be done, it would really just take direction from the board to bring back an item for your consideration. I think in item 12, there's announcements and possible future agenda items. At that point, when we get there, you could recommend as a board that we bring back an item to look at funding a portion, road project.
As an incentive?
It wouldn't be an incentive, because the incentive program is specifically for improvements to private property. It would just be a board-initiated project.
I'll make that motion.
Street.
To bring it back.
To bring it back.
Okay, bring it back, and John, everything that we do goes to the city council.
Yes.
For approval, so coach us on what our next step would be, and of course, Stephen has expertise in that as well, and I appreciate that, but whatever we initiate and what comes out of this commission, I want it shined up where it will be approved by the city council. And,
Yeah.
So anyway, well said. I appreciate y'all's comments, and I appreciate Stephen, so. Okay, carry on.
Yes, sir. So the last project that we're recommending funding for I jumped ahead of myself. So 2320 North Chadbourne, which is Lucio and Sons Roofing, requested $9,986 to install new windows, paint their building, install new doors, and install an iron fence around their property. Because they are going to do a substantial portion of the labor themselves, they were able to keep that cost down below $10,000. So, of course, no applicant match would be required on that project. And then lastly, 2122 North Chadbourne, which is Tritex Fence Company. They're requesting funding for facade improvements, outside storage screening, fencing, and paving. They're gonna install a new fence and gate. They're gonna paint their building. They're gonna replace metal siding on their facade. They're gonna install rock on their building, and they will pave the adjacent area with concrete. And we do recommend funding this project for $59,362.50, and that would require an applicant match of $19,787.50. So just, a broad summary, we've walked through each of the projects. The total amount that we recommend funding in TIRZ North is $105,348.50.
Okay, sir. How do you want us to handle this? You want us to deal with the north and then you go to the south, or how do you want to do it?
So what I'm going to do is I'll walk through the south as well, and then I have a summary at the end that
Good.
walks through north and south, and then you can, of course, take any action or ask any questions, absolutely.
You're doing good. Carry on.
Thank you. So we received 4 applications in Tier South. We recommend funding 3, and we're seeking board input on the 4th project. So the first project is at 19 West Beauregard, which is box hangar 210. The applicant is seeking funding for facade improvements, which includes installing a new cornice and tile. And for those that aren't aware, that's the building that's right across that 01 Ale House restaurant. This project requires DHRC approval, and the applicant has indicated that they will work with staff to obtain that DHRC approval before they commence any work. They received $39,872 for their improvements at this location during a prior tier cycle. We recommend funding their project for $34,650 with the caveat that this all is contingent upon DHRC approval. We can't enter into any agreement and we can't start any work until the applicant obtains approval by DHRC. So if the board did want to act today on this project, they could approve the project with the condition that they still need to go through the DHRC process, and any changes or amendments that DHRC makes would be incorporated into the agreement and their scope of work.
DHRC is
The Design Historic Review Commission.
historical.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, tell me, what did you cut out? Their request was 46.2. And
So-
you're recommending 34,650.
Right. So with that initial amount that was placed in the request was inclusive of their 25% match.
Oh,
So we had to carve out that 25% match. And so that's where the 34,650
okay,
comes from.
good.
And before he moves on, I'll just make a note. The board in the past had some concerns that folks were coming to you all for funding and not going to the Design and Historic Review Commission first. You all changed your policies a couple of years ago to require that they submit with their request an approval letter from the DHRC. So if you approve this today, you're going a little bit against your guidelines. I think the issue with actually both of these is they have both in the past gotten a DHRC approval, but these are changes to those, and so they do have to go back to the DHRC.
Okay.
So we caught these discrepancies late because this one, for example, already had DHRC approval, but we didn't realize until just a couple of weeks ago that it didn't include these details that they're asking for. So
Wow.
in this case, normally I think what we would come to you and say, we would not recommend funding these until they go back and get the DHRC approval and reapply. In this case, I think we're comfortable.
Well, we can approve them subject to, can't we?
Yeah, I think in this case, we're comfortable with that.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we understand that. Yeah, if you don't get that historical commission deal, there's no reason to.
Right.
Okay, very good.
23 West Beauregard, which is right next door. The applicant is seeking funding for facade improvements, which would include installing a new awning. This project also requires DHRC approval, and similar to the last property, they indicated that they'll work with us and that any board approval would be contingent upon DHRC approval. We recommend funding the project for $12,839.06. 121 North Chadbourne, which is Studio 121 Events. They're going to be like a bridal venue and an event center, so it'll be a really neat building once the project's completed. They're seeking funding for fire sprinkler installation, facade improvements, and secondary egress. The project received DHRC approval already, and we recommend funding the project for $37,852. And then the last property, the fourth, is 221 South Chadbourne, which is Stango's Coffee Shop. And I know John had touched on this earlier, but the one, question that John and I raised during the evaluation procedure was, are we gonna fund this project? It's under 10,000, no applicant match would be required, and the window replacement is a worthy project, but the windows are not facing a street, and so what is the board's direction on funding that project? So when you see at the bottom of the screen, we have $2 amounts. We wanted to give the board kind of an overview. If you approve all 4 projects, it would be that $89,000 number. If you said, we don't want to fund window replacements where it's not going to have a visual impact, a street-facing visual impact, well, then we can carve out that $4,000, and it would be that $85,000 number. So we're really just kind of presenting it to the board neutral.
We have a question.
Yes, sir.
If you looked at that building,
I have.
would you personally recommend, I'm gonna put you on the spot, that those windows be funded?
That's a tough question.
It is.
It is a
That's what
tough.
they pay you for.
Well, in my opinion, that's like, you go to one of those shady car salesmen, they put a new paint job on a car, make it look nice in front, but the car salesman knows the engine's not worth it.
So I will get you some background. I'm city's former purchasing manager, so I'm very procedural. I'm very rules oriented. I'm very fit inside a policy and fit inside a box person. So I'm going to preface my response with that. For me, when a TIRZ policy says that we are intending to reduce blight and we're trying to make it improvements that are street facing, then this would be inconsistent with that policy. I'm not going to take a personal position on it, but I will say that's what the policy says. So I'm going to leave that in the board's hands to make their decision.
In your opinion, does it improve the looks of the building aesthetically?
I think it would improve the aesthetics of the building if new windows were put on the building. Yes, sir.
Well, if you were looking at the back side of it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to tell.
That's
It would
the
look great
issue.
from the alley. It would look great from the
You know,
alley.
I'll be honest,
But it
if
has no
this,
material effect on the building itself.
Absolutely.
if this had been a request for like $50,000, I think our answer would have been an absolutely no.
Exactly.
But I think the reason we were waffling a little bit is because it is only $4,000.
And if
So-
I can make a
I'm
recommendation.
just trying to feel you out, see how you
You
think.
know, of course, I drove by that. I've always enjoyed eating in Stango. I think it's, but it looks to me like the business is closed. And I
Right.
heard that it might be for sale. And I don't want to start hearsay, but I've heard that it is.
Yeah.
So that, I don't know, there's a lot of conflicting.
Well, it was the best pizza in town, so if we can make a condition that he reopens,
Yeah.
then.
Yes.
Members, I am an ex-officio of the board, so I'll make a comment. The board is to make decisions about the rules as they are stated in the TIRZ documents. The TIRZ documents are saying that if it's an improvement that is going to increase the tax base, then it should have a high priority. You said that earlier. In that particular case, even though it doesn't face the front of the building, it's an apartment. And so he's trying to sell that building. And so if he makes an improvement to that building, it's going to increase sales tax, his property values, maybe not tremendously, but it does create, and if he sells the building, it's going to create more tax revenue for the city. Right now, it's not creating that much because it's closed. But once he sells the building, a business goes in there, then his tax revenues are going to increase overall for the city in comparison to that, in relationship to that one. On the 19 West Beauregard, they did an incredible job replacing the facade on that building. It's a rock, historic. They put a fabulous balcony on it. That block has dramatically changed just because of that one building in relationship relationship to what they're trying to do. The cornice and tile that they're working on to put, again, is gonna increase the facade, and it's gonna make it more valuable in the long run. And it's a building that's been on and off empty in downtown for over a decade, and the improvement is dramatic. I'm also sit as an ex officio of the Design and Historic Review Commission, and I can guarantee you, as much as I can, that that is going to pass. They've already been there before. The people that own the building are an engineering firm, and so they know what they're doing, and I highly recommend that look at, rethink how you might look at that from that perspective.
Is that engineering firm gonna occupy that building?
Yes, sir. The engineering firm is occupying the building, and they will also be leasing office space in there. Since they don't need to take the whole building up, they're gonna lease some office space, and we do need office space downtown.
Mr. Chairman, I have an observation on 221. I think there's enough questions with it being vacant and it being potentially for sale. We don't know that. I'm not in favor of funding that 4168 at all on that building.
Okay, anybody else have comments about it?
Well, I mean, it's for sale, but he lives there, and, I mean, even if it doesn't sell, he's gonna put something in there. I mean, he was talking about maybe putting in like a shop, like an antique shop, something that fits the guidelines of the Concho, like, you know, those shops that are already down there. So, if it doesn't sell, I mean, he's still gonna put that business to work. And like Dell said, the taxes are gonna go up a little bit with that little bit of facade. And from what I understand, the South could use every little bit of help it can get, because there's just a lot of nonprofits that don't give tax to the South side. So I think us helping them out a little bit will still generate a little bit. And then if he does sell it, we get a business going in there, it'll just be ready for them.
The window replacements are for his apartment here in the back. His apartment's in the back of the building.
For his residence?
Well, if he sells the building, the residence goes with it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, Greg?
I want to ask a question. Maybe I misunderstood earlier. I understand below 10,000 in the north, there's no match. But I thought you said below 10,000 in the south, there was still a match.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, but you're recommending full funding even though there's a match?
I'd have to go back and look, but that may have included a match. That's the 75%
I thought I
Right.
heard that
that
too.
he would have to match.
Correct.
I understood there was supposed to be a match on below 10,000 in
Well,
the
it
south
is.
because
Well,
because we have such low
The
funding.
total project
The full
cost is
funding-
$5,557.
So he does have a match
So
in
he
there.
is. putting
Yeah.
a
That's right.
match in there.
So there's a 25% match.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because the total cost is
Okay.
55,
57.
57.
So there's a match in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, how do you want us to handle these, one by one, or?
So I'll move to let me take a step
Okay, I'm
back.
sorry, I'm getting ahead of you.
No, you're perfect. So we'll consider the north projects and we'll consider the south projects. But before we do that, I wanted to give you all kind of a picture of the financial position of both north and south zones. So as John discussed during his financial report, the available balance for assignment in north is roughly 1.3 million. If you take the funding recommendations presented today by staff, you will still have 1.2 million available for future projects. Similarly, in the south, we have $128,845 available for assignment. If you take staff recommendations, and that $89,000 is inclusive of Mr. Stango's project, there would still be $39,000 available for assignment in the south. So I will now walk back to the north, let you take a look at those projects and the funding amounts and make any determination or motions that you all deem appropriate.
And what I would suggest is, depending on how much agreement there is, one potential motion could be to recommend approval based on the staff recommendation, with or without Stangos, and that could be a simple motion unless there's some disagreement on some of the projects, in which case you could take them one by one. But as we discussed them, it seemed that there was general agreement on most. But I would just leave that up to the chair on how to handle that in terms of motion.
Well, let's try that. Let's take the applications, the north and the south, as recommended by the staff, save and accept Stangos, and see if we can get a motion and a second and approval on those, and then we'll.
I'm sorry, if I could interrupt. Before we take a motion, we probably do need to open it up for public comment.
I'm
in
sorry,
case-
you're correct. Any public comment on these items? I think we've had some input, so.
I have a
All right.
question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Didn't you did I hear correctly, that you said there are other potential funding items for Windland that could be considered by the board for approval?
Yes, those would have to be taken up at a future meeting
That's
with
right.
a specific agenda
Okay,
item,
and
but
so-
yes, that's correct.
Mr. Chairman, then that brings another question. Will you consider, I would like to consider the application of the north separately from the south, if you would.
Okay.
And I'd like to make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation on the north with the caveat that the staff work with the appropriate authorities at Windland Manufacturing to bring back an additional application for funding consideration by this board for the improvements that are now done or planned by Windland Manufacturing at the next funding cycle.
Say that's really contingent on Windland to submit an application. I would hate to make a motion that directs staff in a way that may not meet
Well,
what
they're not
Windland's
real,
wanting
they're
to do.
not real savvy about City Hall.
Okay.
That's
Well,
the
if they
problem.
submit an application, of
That's
course,
the problem.
city staff would review it and go through the procedure. But I don't know that this board should direct staff to do it outside of Windland actually submitting the application.
Okay,
if that
well,
makes
and
sense.
your comment's well made, but when we communicate to Windland whatever our decision
That's all I'm
is,
asking you, communicate.
just communicate
with
to them and say
These are
that,
some things that could be considered, and the board has asked that you resubmit an application next funding cycle. That's all I'm asking, guys.
yeah, we're not asking you as city staff to do it. We're asking within the parameters that you experts would have to guide us in, within those parameters, communicate to Windland that there is an avenue that they can pursue.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
we
The
can do that.
motion's not gonna be contingent on bringing back an application for.
No, they
No,
gotta do it.
no, they're gonna have to do it.
They've gotta do it, but
Yeah.
you've gotta communicate.
Yeah.
The board is desirous of assisting Windland, and these are the items the staff has identified as potential funding that can be considered by the
Yeah,
board.
so that's a direction
Yeah.
from the
Yes.
board that we can take.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, I don't want to put you in the position, you stated it very well. No, we're as a board directing you to communicate to Windland what avenues are available to them for our further consideration.
They got
We want to
bad,
work with them.
Yeah,
yeah,
That's all. Like, we
Yeah.
they just got a bad taste right now, and I think a little extra effort by the staff to communicate with them would be helpful right now, okay?
but it's our direction. We're not asking you to
No, we're not saying you
initiate.
prepare the application.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that.
Well, we're not asking them to initiate the response. We are. We're asking you to initiate the response.
Right.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. All right, so your motion is what?
To fund all of the north
Mm-hmm.
with the staff to communicate to Windland that there are maybe additional items that can be submitted in an application by Windland to this board in the next funding cycle.
And if I may, I think for the sake of our deputy attorney, I think what may be more appropriate here is we make the motion to approve the TIRZ North applications as presented. And under the agenda items for future consideration, that is where the direction will be made to staff.
No, that's not my motion, sir. I made the motion that the staff is to communicate that this is approved, and they can vote it up or down. that it's approved, with the staff must communicate there are additional potential funding items for Windland. If you don't do it, then there's none, see what I'm saying?
And that's the problem,
Guys,
is if there,
we
if,
exist to help the people of this town.
Well,
And all you gotta do is make a phone call to Kendall and say, look, the board thinks there might be some other things that can be funded. And these are the things that the staff has identified. You need to submit an application if you want this additional money.
I agree with that. And I think, however, as a matter of practice, we can't tie action regarding funding on other projects to action of staff to reach out to another potential.
That's just part of the motion. That's just a direction of the staff.
but it's really not an action item on the agenda today. The action you can take is with regard to these projects.
Okay, I tell you what,
So-
Stephen, I think the counselor is probably right, and
I
let's,
think the staff's splitting hairs, but I'll
Well-
withdraw the motion and I'll just sit here and be quiet.
well,
And
no.
we're happy to follow up and do what you
Absolutely.
suggested.
I think what John said, and if you're listening to the commission, I know you are, we want the Windland issue on an agenda for future meetings.
Yes.
And you know what we're,
Yep.
council work it out in whatever legal.
Would an
terminology
update
you
to
need
the board in, either via email or at the next board meeting where we say, since the last board meeting, this is the action that staff has taken to reach out to Windland. And we outline, we called them, we emailed them, we've done this, and we're working with them just to kind of keep staff accountable and make sure that we're fulfilling the mission and the charge that Mr. Brown set forth today.
Right.
Is everyone comfortable with that as well?
Yeah, as long as in good faith, and
Absolutely.
I think I know what Stephen's saying, we're trying to figure out how we can help them somehow.
Absolutely.
If it's within legal,
Yes, sir, and I liked Nolan's idea to direct staff as a future agenda item to bring that back exactly what he said.
Right.
So, we'll have to bring it back based
yeah.
on y'all's
let's
direction. for
just,
that.
we're directing you to bring it back to us with these, communicating to Windland and. All right, we have a motion then. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my comment there is, the motion should be about the north, not about asking somebody to do something.
Right, that's right.
But the board, separate from these motions, could put in a strong recommendation to the staff to go to Wendland in discussion on what we can do to help them.
That's right.
That we can do, but it can't be part of a motion for approving this.
Okay. And that's what you were
That's
saying.
my
Okay.
viewpoint of it.
All right, so Stephen withdraws his motion. Do I have a motion to?
I make a
Tom?
motion that we fund the north
Okay.
project
All right, do we have a second?
as the staff.
As recommended. Do I have a second?
I second.
Fred, Jason, seconds. Do we have any other comments? Appreciate everyone's input. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Okay,
All right.
moving on to the south.
Moving on to the south.
So kind of the hanging chad here and the outstanding question for the board is, do we want to fund the 416809 for the Stangos project and of course any other project in the south? So I will kind of present these projects and let you guys make a motion and determination on what you would like to approve into your south.
Well, I'll speak first as chairman. Initially, I would have been opposed to funding that amount, but I appreciate Dale's comments, and I think he's right. I mean, let's, if we're trying to make sure that, if Stangos, if he has that property up for sale, and if it enhance his ability to move that project, I don't want an empty building downtown.
Nobody does.
And speaking for myself personally, I would not buy that property if I were looking at the back of that building, looking at those windows. That's not what I'd be interested in, even though it might be just $4,000 to replace them. But anything we can do to enhance that property is probably within our purview. So that's my comments. Anybody have any other comments or input? Greg, you're pensive. What do you think?
I think the first three are not an issue.
Right.
And if we're trying to save the building, like you said, and it's sold and it adds some value and it goes up on the tax rolls a little bit, then I think we're okay. I think Jason said it well, so.
Yeah.
And I will say this, I believe I can vote on 3 of these, but I have to excuse myself from 23 West Beauregard. He's my uncle, so I
Okay,
can't be part of that vote.
so make a notation of that. That he's going to abstain on 23 West Beauregard.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the first 3 items on North and do not fund 221 South Chadbourne. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the first 3 and to decline the 4th one, 221 South Chadbourne. Do we have a second?
On the one where there's going to be a recusal, maybe take that one separately, just so it's
Well, maybe,
clear.
maybe because since Jason can't vote, should we do each one individually?
Sure. Let's do them individually then, and that'll solve that. Let's just,
Is that okay, Stephen?
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, let's do them separately then. On 19 West Beauregard, box hanger 210.
I'll make a motion to approve 19 West Beauregard.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. 23 West Beauregard.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Any comments regarding that 12,839? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have 1 abstention. Third, 121 North Chadbourne, Studio 121 Events, $37,852. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, Tom. Comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Lastly, and we'll take in this separately, 221 South Chadbourne for $4,168. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion to approve that project.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
1 opposed. Okay, sir. What else?
Okay. So I'll move from talking about the prior application cycle to discussing the projects that we have in progress.
Okay. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I can
I'm
make
just
it
kidding.
happen.
I'm just kidding.
We currently have 4 projects in progress in South TIRZ. Box Hanger 210, 19 West Beauregard. They're already making facade improvements, but now, of course, with what you've just approved, they're going to take that to just the next level by adding that cornice. We've got 40 West Tuig, which is Diamond Enterprises, 109 North Chadbourne, which is Concho Venue, and 226 South Abe, Reyna's Tacos.
Are they all
They're keeping
things
in
you have?
contact.
Okay.
They are checking in periodically. In fact, I just received some reporting documents on one of the properties, and so I'll be completing their verification here shortly.
Okay,
So
so-
hopefully, in the next meeting that we have, maybe a completed project for you guys as well.
Great.
We have 12 projects in progress in the North Tiers, and I won't go through and read every one to you all in the interest of my 3 minutes, but 2 of those projects, the North Chadbourne projects we discussed today with Mr. Andrews, and a lot of great projects happening. In fact, the Franco's Cafe and the other Oliver Brown project were the ones that were added in the January meeting. So we're at different stages in all these different projects, but I'm hoping to bring some completed North projects to you all as well, based on what I'm hearing from some of the applicants.
Okay, just make a comment or two about the Huddle House and the Kent Quick Travel Center. What's going on there?
I haven't heard any updates from the applicant on either of those projects.
Have they even started those projects?
Yes.
They
Oh,
have
yeah,
passed through those.
absolutely.
Okay, good.
They're moving along.
Okay, they're out of Midland, I believe. I mean, out of, yeah, Midland, I think. Okay, so they're moving along.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
And some completed projects. So I wanted to show you all some before and afters of Mr. Vincent at 123 North Chadbourne, the Buffalo Soldier Art Gallery. They made facade improvements and installed a new fire sprinkler system. And I think the before and after photo is kind of worth 1,000 words on that one.
It looks great.
And then we have 2311 North Chadbourne, Big O Auto, which is Oliver Brown. He did facade improvements, installation of a new sign, some paving work, outside storage screening with the new fence, and landscaping. And as you see in those before and after photos, that's a pretty
Okay,
noticeable
yeah, that's what I was looking for. Good.
transformation with the installation of the brick on that facade, and of course the new signage.
Very good.
New signage there, and this new kind of updated carport. And then I'll turn it over to John.
Okay, you did a good job.
Thank you all
Thank you.
for breaking me in.
You did great.
I'll move on to the director's report then. I really didn't have anything except to say, on your next item, it says next meeting, July 27th. There is a city council budget workshop scheduled for that same day. We're still waiting to find out if that's just, it might be just the morning, but it might be scheduled for all day. If it is all day, it's in this space, so we would have to reschedule our meeting. One option, as we've discussed before, a couple of years ago, the board looked at going to meeting every other month. The board decided, well, let's keep the board meeting scheduled every month, but our goal is to meet, about half the times. So another option, if that conflict presents itself, may be just to skip the July meeting and then have the next meeting in August.
John, if you were to move it to July 29th, I'll be unavailable on that date.
I will too. So actually, that's
Okay,
one
so
of the
let's
reasons
go.
that week doesn't work well. But
So that, okay, what's the board's pleasure there?
I think August is good.
Just go to August? Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
feel like getting out in the heat anyways.
Maybe I'm with Jason. Okay, give us, you say you didn't have anything?
that's all I had for directors.
Y'all don't need a motion on this Wyndham thing, you're gonna do it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and I'll take that opportunity on item 12, announcements and future agenda items, just to reaffirm that yes, we will be bringing back, we will talk to Winland, but also be bringing back an item for you to consider.
I can tell you that a little gesture on y'all's part would probably heal a lot of sore wounds, okay? Sure. Okay.
Well, and I appreciate Stephen's comments, but I want to also say I appreciate our counselors'
Right.
input. You keep us out of trouble.
I try.
You're kind of like what I tell my CPA. I don't mind paying his fee, but if the IRS ever comes calling on me, I'm not going to talk to him. He is.
I don't blame you.
Are you with me?
I understand.
All right. Okay, I would love to entertain a motion to
So moved.
adjourn. Motion to adjourn, second.
Aye.
Aye.
See ya.
Thank you. Appreciate all of you. Everybody stay cool.